You have been faithful for a long time, and yet this morning, you woke up tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. The kind that settles deep in your bones after years of believing, years of praying, years of holding on to a God who sometimes feels closer to silence than to answer. You have sat in church pews when your heart was quietly breaking. You have bowed your head in prayer when you had nothing left to say. You have whispered his name in the dark of 3 a.m. Not because you were full of faith, but because you had nowhere else to turn. And somewhere in the middle of all of that quiet faithfulness, a question began to form. A question you may have been afraid to speak out loud. Does he still know my name? Welcome to Lord's Quiet Whisper, a place where the voice of God meets the deepest silence of your soul. If something brought you here today, know this: it was not an accident. It never is. There is a moment described in the book of Exodus that most people rush past without truly understanding its weight. Moses, a man who had spent 40 years in the wilderness, not 40 days, not 40 weeks, but 40 years, was going about an ordinary day when something stopped him. A bush was burning, and it did not burn out. And from within that fire, God spoke. But before he gave Moses any instruction, before he revealed any plan or purpose, God said something that should stop every weary heart cold. In Exodus 3:4, he called Moses by name. Twice. Moses, Moses. Not a general announcement to whoever was listening. A specific, personal, deliberate call to one man who had spent 4 decades wondering if he had been forgotten. And the first thing God wanted Moses to know, before anything else, was that he saw him, that he knew exactly who he was, that the years of silence had not been years of absence. And that is exactly what he wants you to know right now. You have been walking your own wilderness. Maybe it has been 5 years, maybe it has been 20, maybe you have carried a grief so long it has become part of how you introduce yourself to the morning. A marriage that broke, a child who walked away from everything you raised them to believe, a body that began to betray you in ways that frightened you, a prayer you prayed so many thousands of times that eventually the words started to feel hollow. Not because your faith was gone, but because hope deferred, as Proverbs 13:12 says, makes the heart sick. And your heart has been sick for a long time. Not spiritually lost, just deeply, quietly tired. But here is what you must understand about the God who called Moses by name in the middle of an ordinary wilderness day. He had not forgotten Moses during those 40 years. He had not lost track of him. He had not moved on to someone more qualified, or more faithful, or less broken. Every single one of those silent years was preparation. Every moment that felt like abandonment was actually formation. God was not ignoring Moses. He was building him into the exact vessel the moment required. And in Isaiah 49:15-16, God made a declaration so tender it should bring tears to your eyes. He said, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." Engraved, not written in pencil, not typed into a list. Engraved, permanent, intentional, and impossible to remove. Your name is on his hands. It has always been there. You have carried things in silence that no one around you fully understood. There were seasons when you smiled in front of others and fell apart behind closed doors. Seasons when you opened your Bible and the words felt flat. Not because they were not true, but because pain has a way of creating a fog between your heart and the voice of God. You prayed and heard nothing. You waited and saw nothing. And slowly, without even realizing it, you began to wonder if maybe God was finished with you. if maybe the best chapters of your story had already been written, and what remained was simply the long, quiet ending. But I need you to hear this with everything inside you. That thought was never from him. In Romans 8:38-39, Paul wrote words that have carried millions of weary believers through their darkest nights. He wrote that nothing, not death, not life, not angels, not demons, not the present, not the future, not any power in existence. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Paul did not write those words from a comfortable place. He wrote them from prison, from a life of beatings and shipwrecks and betrayal and loss. He wrote them as a man who had every human reason to believe God had abandoned him, and yet had discovered something so unshakable, so deeply rooted in personal encounter with Jesus, that no circumstance could touch it. And that same love, that same relentless pursuing, never letting go love, is the love that has been following you through every silent season you have ever walked through. Think about the moments in your life when God felt most absent. The hospital room, the graveside, the night you sat alone and wondered how you would keep going. What if I told you that in every single one of those moments, He was not watching from a distance? In Psalm 34:18, David wrote something that should anchor your heart forever. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close, not observing, not waiting for you to get yourself together before He drew near. Close, in the very moment of breaking, in the very center of your pain. His presence was not absent in your hardest seasons. It was most concentrated there, like a father who pulls his child closer when the storm gets louder, not further away. And that prayer you gave up on, that request you carried for so long that you finally laid it down because hoping for it felt more painful than releasing it. That dream you buried quietly because you decided God must have a different plan. He has not forgotten it. In Revelation 8:4, there is a breathtaking image of the prayers of God's people, rising before His throne like incense. Every prayer, every cry, every whispered, desperate plea, offered in faith, rising and being held before the face of God. Your prayers did not disappear into the ceiling. They rose, they were received. They are before Him still, and in His perfect timing, which has never once been early and has never once been late, He will answer in a way that will make every year of waiting suddenly make sense. Because here's what God needs you to understand about this season you are in right now. The silence you have been living in is not the silence of a God who has moved on. It is the silence of a God who is doing something so careful, so precise, so specific to who you are and what you need, that it cannot be rushed. In John 11, when Lazarus was dying, Jesus did not hurry. He waited. And when He finally arrived and Martha fell at His feet in grief and confusion, He did not defend His timing with explanation. He simply said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" He is saying the same thing to you today. Not yet is not the same as never. Delay is not the same as denial. And what He is preparing to do in your life is so far beyond what you have been asking for, that if He showed you right now, you would not be able to contain it. He said your name this morning, in the quiet, in the stillness before the weight of the day arrived. He leaned close to where you were, and He spoke the name He has always known, the name written on His hands before the foundation of the world. And what He is about to reveal to you in the days ahead, about why He has been silent, about what He has actually been doing in that silence, will change everything. Because the God who called Moses by name in the wilderness did not do it to send him back to where he came from. He did it because the most important part of Moses' story was just beginning. And yours, no matter how many years you have walked, no matter how tired you have become, yours is just beginning too.